This is the screen we'll see when we first open the program. And let's cover these 6 buttons here. So import is for bringing in STL or OBJ files. And if we click on open instead, that lets us open an existing Meshmixer file. Keyboard shortcuts will show you a comprehensive list of all the different ways that you can use the keys on your keyboard to speed up your workflow. And then the buttons at the bottom are for importing different starting geometry. So just to get started, let's import Bunny. And let me just point out a few things about the panel here. So we have some pretty simple tool buttons here on the left. If we want to import some additional STL or OBJ files to be used with the Bunny, we would click on Import and then Append to add it to the existing geometry. If we were to instead click Replace, it would get rid of the Bunny and just show the new geometry that we import. If we click on Meshmix, that lets us bring in some basic geometry that Meshmix has preloaded, like primitives or letters or legs or other things like that. The selection panel is here. This is very important for making selections of the geometry, either with the brush or the lasso, and we'll cover this in detail soon. Then our sculpting toolbox is right here. So by clicking on this, we can then start to use these brushes to modify the geometry. We don't really use stamp much in this class, so we'll skip over that. We can use edit, though, to make transformations to the geometry. We'll talk about this panel in a fair amount of detail. And then analysis is for more technical types of transformations to the form. So for example, if there's a hole in the form and we want to use the inspector to close up that hole, we would use analysis to get to that command. And finally, there are export options here. So we can export as an OBJ or STL. Let's see, some other basic things to mention are that while we're bringing in STL or OBJ files, when we're working on a project, we will probably want to save it in Meshmixer format so that we have a bit more information. So we can do that by just going to File, Save, or Save As. I recommend saving a new file, saving as a new version every half hour. So what that would mean is that for the first half hour, I would save this as Bunny 01. For the next 30-minute period, I would save it as Bunny 02, and so on. And the reason for that is that Meshmixer sometimes will crash, and sometimes you can lose a bunch of work if your files become corrupted. So always save those backups in iterations. And let's see. I think we can skip over most of those other buttons here. Some things we should say about the camera are that the way that I'm moving around right now is I'm orbiting, and I'm doing that by holding the right mouse button down and dragging. And that's really one of the most important ways of moving the camera around, because it lets us understand how the form exists in space. We can also zoom by rolling the middle mouse button forward and backward. By the way, let me mention that the written manual has these same commands outlined in it. And we can pan also by holding down the middle mouse button and dragging side to side. Now, you'll notice if I zoom back that this bunny is sitting in the middle of a sort of a virtual 3D printer bed platform. We really don't need this to show up. It's a bit distracting, so I like to hide it by going to View and uncheck Show Printer Bed. And then we can also go back to View and uncheck Show Grid, so that now we just see the bunny. Now, one final thing I'll say about using the camera is that as we're orbiting around our form, as we're panning and zooming, sometimes our center of focus can get confused. You see how it's not aligned in a very helpful way. So the way that we can fix that is by mousing over the geometry, whatever part we want to put in the middle of our orbit, and push C on the keyboard. And that will redefine the center of our orbit.